And cue the graphic, Dan. And Ruth, unmute yourself.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Augusta. We are a welcoming congregation in the liberal religious tradition, and we are happy to have you with us this morning. My name is Ruth McClellan-Nugent, and I will be your worship associate during this service, which our theme today is Good Trouble, in dedication to the legacy of John Lewis. We have messages and announcements from a member of our board, Tim Hunter.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Hunter. I'm a member at large of the UUCA, and the announcements are as follows. Save the date. The UUCA, in partnership with the Interfaith Fellowship of Augusta and Islamic Society of Augusta, the Women Interfaith Network, and the Aiken Interfaith Partners will sponsor a private screening of the film Same God, which explores the polarization, taking place within the evangelical community over issues of race, Islam, and religious freedoms. The movie will be on October 20th. More details will be shared in the coming weeks. We'd like to thank everyone for a successful blood drive. There were 23 units of blood donated from 15 people. Shepherd Community Blood Bank was very grateful for the use of our space to help the community in a time of needing blood. The Romeos, the Retired Old Men Eating Out, will hold a virtual meeting on Wednesday, September 2nd from 12 to 1:15 with John Black hosting via Zoom. For questions, please contact Andy Reese. And if you're a retired old dude like me, then you're more than welcome to come out and we will just get together over Zoom. So we normally get together, in person, and it's normally a good time, but we know during these times, things are different. I wasn't able to attend the last one over Zoom, so I'm looking forward to the next one. Bring food you can eat on camera. We'll accept our smacking, and we won't get too mad if you like smacking on camera. After service, there will be a discussion. You don't have to do anything special, just stay online. It's from 12 to 1. So nothing special to do, just stay online and then we'll discuss the service. So that's all I have. Thank you very much, Ruth.
We'll begin with our opening chime. And then we invite you to join us in our opening hymn, number 118, This Little Light of Mine, with lyrics on the screen.
Morning, everybody. It's wonderful to see you all today, and I'm so glad that you're joining us. And please make sure to sing along at home. This little light of mine. I think this is something that most people know. Here we go. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up the world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up the world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up the world, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Light from extraordinary lives can shine through the centuries to illuminate our search for truth and meaning. They show us it is possible to overcome the obstacles that face all of us without compromising our principles. They are examples of what it can mean to live a fully realized life. May the flame we light remind us that each of us has this potential within us.
The opening words this morning. Although we gather virtually, we are still a community. We gather to celebrate that which is sacred in our lives. We choose to do this in community because celebrating together deepens our experience, and these people are part of what we hold most dear. That which we hold sacred gives shape and meaning to our lives. It largely determines who we are and who we might become. Come, let us celebrate the ultimate in our lives with joy and thanksgiving.
I think that's a cue that we're going to start the joys and sorrows at this.
Usually we sing Spirit of Life around here, don't we?
That sounds like a good idea. Let's do
Why don't we do that? David, can we do that?
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirs of compassion. Blow, winter wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life comes to me, come to me.
And now is the time in our service where we share our joys and our concerns. I will drop a first stone into the water for those who cannot be with us, and a second for the members of our military who are deployed. And then I'll turn it over to Marika for the rest of our joys and concerns.
Okay, let's.
And now we come to our time of shared meditation. So I invite everyone to get comfortable. Hopefully you're already comfortable because you're in your kitchen or living room, but settle down and just relax a bit. Take a deep kind of cleansing breath and then let that out. And the words today are titled "To Be of Use," and this is from Marge Piercy. People I love the best jump into the work head first, without dallying in the shallows, and swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of the element, the black sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves like an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come or the fire must be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn, are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. We'll now chime in and out of a moment of shared silence.
David, the musical response.
David, I think your mic is off.
Gathered here in this mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle of the power. Spirit, draw near.
And now we invite your generosity. We give these gifts freely, and these gifts are gratefully received. We dedicate these gifts to the work of our congregation, serving human wholeness, caring for our planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, loving one another. We dedicate these gifts to the work of this congregation, weaving a tapestry of compassion and action, faith and fellowship, hope and wholeness. We dedicate these gifts to the work of this congregation, and we affirm our lives within it. We invite you to give at this time or another time to the address on the screen. And now Andy Reese will give us a reading, and he is also our guest in the pulpit today. So take it away, Andy.
Okay, the reading today is by Kent Keith, called Do It Anyway. People are illogical, unreasonable, and self-centered. Love them anyway. If you do good, people will accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Do good anyway. If you're successful, you will win false friends and true enemies. Succeed anyway. The good you do today will be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. Honesty and frankness make you vulnerable. Be honest and frank anyway. The biggest men and women with the biggest ideas can be shot down by the smallest men and women with the smallest minds. Think big anyway. People favor underdogs, but follow only top dogs. Fight for a few underdogs anyway. What you spend years building may be destroyed overnight. Build anyway. People really need help, but may attack you if you do help them. Help people anyway. Give the world the best you have and you'll be kicked in the teeth. Give the world the best you have anyway. As most of you know, I'm a religious humanist, but Unitarian Universalism has a large enough umbrella that I can practice that within that faith. And yes, I'm going to define religious humanism again so that we're on the same page. Religious humanism gives the highest priority to human needs, values, and dignity. It emphasizes reason, compassion, scientific inquiry, and community with the goal of human fulfillment in the natural world. Let me repeat that slowly. Religious humanism gives the highest priority to human needs, values, and dignity. It emphasizes reason, compassion, scientific inquiry, and community with the goal of human fulfillment in the natural world. That last phrase, in the natural world, means that our focus is on this world. There may not be another world beyond this one, but if there is, it's beyond the realm of science. It is in this world that we can work to make life better for everyone. And besides, we have to take care of this world because it's the only one that we know of that has wine, chocolate, and jazz. But how about the phrase just before that, human fulfillment? Nice, fuzzy phrase that lends itself to a number of possible meanings. Positive psychology has addressed that. It's that positive psychology is the scientific study of what makes life worth living. Isn't that an interesting idea, to study what makes life go well rather than trying to just fix it when it goes wrong? Positive psychologists say that there are 5 factors required to live a good, fulfilling life. Number 1, positive emotions such as love, happiness, and joy. Engagement, that is, involvement in activities that you enjoy. Relationships, deep connections with family and friends. Meaning and purpose are gained by working on something larger than yourself and which will outlive you. Accomplishments. Doing something you like is fine, but you do need to accomplish at least some of your goals along the way. Modern psychologists actually started with the Greek idea of eudaimonia, which is usually transferred as the good life, but with some broader implications. It has the same factors I just cited and a few more, but more importantly, it also added a societal component. The Greeks realized that our full humanity can unfold only in community. That led to their belief that the highest good was the final end of all human endeavors, so that the right actions are those that contribute to the well-being of everyone in the community. This in turn requires a society and physical environment structure to provide the freedom and resources for all members of the society to develop to their fullest potential. And therein lies the problem. Our society is structured to prevent some of the members of our society from developing to their fullest potential. All of the civil rights struggles for the past 200 years have been to extend the circle of those who should be allowed to have access to the freedom and resources they need to flourish. The fight to abolish slavery, extension of the right to vote to Black men, then to women and Native Americans, the end of segregation, the gay rights movement, equal pay for equal work, the right of women to control their own bodies, treatment of immigrants with dignity and respect, the environmental protection movement, the push for a living wage are all about expanding that circle. As I hope all of you realize, the title of this sermon comes from Representative John Lewis's admonition for us to get into good trouble. I had admired Lewis for years, and the recounting of his life story during his funeral only deepened that. He was what John Fowler would classify as the highest stage of moral development, along with people like the Dalai Lama or Mother Teresa. The more common description would be that he was a saint. In the column that Lewis had asked the New York Times to publish on the day of his funeral, Lewis called for us to keep moving. He told us, but particularly the younger generations, to get into good trouble. Good trouble is breaking the rules that hurt people in an attempt to get the rules changed or abolished. John Lewis was a lifelong rule breaker and troublemaker in the service of making people more free, more able to live up to their fullest potential. His level of spiritual maturity wouldn't let him turn away from the injustice he saw and experienced. Maybe getting into good trouble is what these troubled times are calling us to do. The murder of unarmed and unthreatening minority men and women has a centuries-long history in our country, but those of the last few years has provoked a series of continuing protests across the country, indeed across the globe. It gives me hope that the protesters embody the diversity of our country by ethnicity, gender, religion, age, all sorts of things. But as important as the current civil rights movement is, there are other crises that are also pressing in on us and demand our attention. It's almost a perfect storm. The climate change is an existential crisis. That is, it threatens our very existence. Our democracy is threatened by the continuing efforts at voter suppression and by gerrymandering. Deregulation of much of the economy has resulted in the greatest maldistribution of wealth, at least since the 1890s. The hyper-individualism of our culture has seeped into our national policy, resulting in a weakening of ties with other nations who support democracy and the rule of law. The pandemic has exacerbated the food insecurity experienced by far too many people in our community. And some politicians divide us by portraying those with different political ideas as enemies. So we certainly have a wide range of choices about where we want to get into good trouble, don't we? But how are those of us who don't have the spiritual maturity or the courage of John Lewis to respond? I submit to you that we're called to live such that the principles of our faith show in our actions. Our first principle is the inherent worth and dignity of every person. That means every person should have the freedom and resources to live the good life I just described earlier. Lives full of ideas, friendship, passion, contributions, and lasting accomplishments. This is where the good trouble comes in. Taking a stand that leads to making a difference almost guarantees you're going to be getting into good trouble. Do it anyway. Our individual talents and characters will determine how we take a stand. We are few in number, so that to be effective as individuals and as the church, we'll have to be selective in what we want to take on. But that's always been true of our faith. Unitarians and Universalists have always been small minorities in their societies, but have had an outsized influence on the moral issues of their day. The church, any church, has excuse me, has dual imperatives. It must support its members and encourage them to grow spiritually, emotionally, and intellectually. And it must work to make the community and society a more fair and equitable place. Our church is a haven of rest and support for those who are working for the community in which all people are able to flourish. Over the years, several people have told me that our church has saved their sanity by giving them a safe space to express their values and get support for them. People in very conservative areas need to know that they aren't alone. Our external focus has waxed and waned over the decades, but we are recognized as one of the most important liberal voices in Augusta. The liberal media contact us somewhat regularly for our take on issues facing the community. The Interfaith Fellowship of Augusta and the Progressive Religious Coalition simply would not have been formed without us. The example of a stand based on moral conscience does two things. It gives other people courage to speak out knowing that they're not alone. And it calls everyone to live up to what they know is right. The restrictions due to the pandemic have put things on pause, or at least slowed them down. But the Social Justice Committee under Chair Tim Hunter has been developing plans for social justice projects and ways to collaborate with other groups. I'm sure he would be happy to hear from you if you want to get involved. I will also recommend Isabel Wilkerson's new book, Caste, C-A-S-T-E. It makes the case that racial discrimination is subsumed in the larger problem of caste. I think it's the most important book of the past several years, and it should earn Wilkerson her third Pulitzer Prize. It's also extremely well written. After Lewis's funeral, I posted on Facebook pointing out that if we had had term limits, as supported by many of my liberal friends, we would not have had Lewis in Congress for the past 20 years. Think about that. We wouldn't have had that towering moral giant calling our lawmakers to their highest values for this entire century. Got some pushback on that post. Some people whose opinions I respect greatly said that Lewis's of the world are rare, but that the McConnells and Loefflers and Jim Jordans are common, which is obviously true. My friends thought it was worth the loss of people like Lewis to get rid of those who are actively fight against extending equal opportunity to everyone. I didn't try to rebut that opinion online, but I do disagree. Part of the problem is that the proposed term limits, 18 years for senators, 12 years for congressmen, don't actually get rid of that many obstructionists. Yes, McConnell would be gone, but we would also lose Clyburn and Pelosi and Schumer. But that's not the most important loss. We remember the prophets of the Hebrew scriptures who called their countrymen to love mercy and do justice, and to care for the stranger and the widow and the orphan. Their words still have force today, although few people could tell you what Ahab or Manasseh did that was so terrible. Mahatma Gandhi's nonviolent resistance to the British domination of the people of India brought an end to empire because Gandhi's stance appealed to the moral conscience of the English people. Nelson Mandela's courage and persistence eventually ended apartheid in South Africa. Not used to talking this much. John Lewis was called the conscience of the Congress. His unwavering commitment to justice, equity, and freedom for minorities was instrumental in the passage of the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Acts of the 60s. His voice in Congress called the members of Congress to live up to their better natures. As we all know, he wasn't always successful. But those voting to weaken the protections knew in their bones that they were wrong. And this is an example of one thing we can all do. We must be that prophetic voice that consistently calls out instances of injustice, serve as an example for our values. Yes, we may lose friends over it and alienate some family members. Our job is to model how to do it with love. Let me give you an example from close to home. We've added enough new members over the past several years. Most of you never had a chance to meet Hoyt Goodson, Liz's husband. Hoyt was an interesting guy, intelligent, well-read, friendly, funny. He wrote a letter to the editor of the Chronicle almost every month, which was and still is the limit that the Chronicle sets. They were almost always published, even though the viewpoint expressed was basically the polar opposite of the editorial stance of the paper at that time. When Hoyt died, the editors wrote an extensive editorial extolling Hoyt's letters and his clear and consistent presentation of the liberal viewpoint. Hoyt made a difference by consistently calling for the people of our community to live up to their highest values. I'm old and I've been on this road for a long time, so I'm not naive. We're not going to transform the greater CSRA into a liberal bastion, much less all of Georgia. But that doesn't absolve us from doing what we can where we are. And that is particularly true in this critical time in our history. If we don't radically change course over the next 6 months, I truly fear for the future of our democracy, even for our world. 35 or 40 years ago, there was a series of books by John Jakes, collectively called the Kent Family Chronicles. It followed a family from the arrival of the founding patriarch from France before the Revolutionary War for the next 100 years or so. As I remember, it wasn't particularly well written and it was a bit trashy, but I got hooked on the characters and wanted to know what happened to them. But I think one of the reasons that attracted me is I really liked their family motto: take a stand, make a difference. Take a stand, make a difference. Though that in 6 words is what Lewis asked us to do. Take a stand, make a difference. There's a better world awaiting your actions. Amen. May it be so. And the closing hymn is number 1028, if you happen to have one of those blue hymnals, and Fire of Commitment. So David.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and souls ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meets to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of a flame that burns within, then our promise for fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of the living, ring a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still in witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our minds and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision come a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
Andy was going to read our closing words. Andy, I think your mic is off.
A liberal faith challenges us to grow in love and understanding. The love of this congregation provides us with the support and encouragement to risk that growth. Let us go forth from this time together resolved to live in such a way that our highest ideals are obvious to everyone with whom we interact, and walk quietly in joy and beauty until we gather again. Amen.
Amen. Blessed be.
Our postlude today is by Curtis Mayfield. Happy Sunday, everybody.
Okay, everyone has been unmuted.